when you're ready. Right,
Yep.
we're ready. Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to full council.
Thank you, ma'am.
We start with our public session, and we have one member of the public wishing to speak. Mrs. Robinson.
I've really got two topics tonight. The main one is the main one is Cornwall's Meadow care home here. I know that many of you here have fought so hard to prevent the development of the care home here in Cornwall's Meadow. That was over 5 years ago, and many of the councillors who had knowledge of the history of the site and other town centres around it are no longer in the council. But as a member of the public, I've always taken an interest, and especially on the as the care home is on the riverbank, and I also live on the riverbank, but that's a selfish side. But I've taken an interest in it, and I would just like to express a few thoughts about it. It is a concern that the users of the town centre car park and the facilities for pedestrians has not been considered. There are 71 residential care places and 14 apartments. And some of those apartments will have cars because they've got 2 or 3 bedrooms, so some of them will have cars. But on the site, there are only 27 parking lots in total. There is no parking for the staff, including the maintenance staff. There is no parking set aside for medical staff, including doctors, paramedics and the ambulance, and the fire service. This could well be essential in fire service because they will be needed perhaps to pump out water from the site. The shared access road with the Grand Junction, 13 the High Street, would be used for food deliveries, laundry services, refuse collections, removal to and fro the apartments, the hearse and other things. And the Grand Junction side, well, they will need it for the delivery lorries, you know, for the drinks, food deliveries, refuse collection, etc. for the Grand Junction side. That too has no staff or customer parking. Having seen the site plan dated November 2020, I can clearly see what I tried to express in the notes that I sent to the Town Council in September 2000, this September. So these are the notes that I sent because I was concerned about the pedestrian crossing and so on, and they went to the Town Council because I don't know which part really. So that leaves the question of the flooding to the properties downstream from the site that still needs to be sorted. And I did wonder if a survey could be made of the footfall of the footbridge here for the whole day to see just how many people are using it, because every person that uses that has got to go right in front of the exit to the site, and it's on a very dangerous corner, and that's what I expressed in my written comment, which I gave to Kathleen. And it is important that the pedestrians get their rights, and all of us, because when you go to the Grand Junction corner and watch the traffic there, it's in every direction, and when they're coming into Cornwall's Park, well, there'll be vehicles leaving from that entrance and this entrance. So that's the main concern. And the other is, Well, when the developers came, I did, by the way, give them a plan of the floodplain, but that didn't bear any fruit, but that was there. And the other concern that I have, where is it gone? Oh. Sorry about this. The other concern that I have is, I saw in the local paper that McDonald's Tesco application for 24-hour daily opening for refreshments. And I noticed it was McDonald's Tesco. And Tesco's is not open 24 hours, but I think it's open from 6 AM to midnight, and Sunday, I think probably from 10 to 4. This again is a shared site, and it's in the cul-de-sac off the Buckingham Road. Tesco's and what do you call it, McDonald's will be sharing the same site. And I think this will be very detrimental to Buckingham Town as a whole. My reasons for this is, while refreshments are non-alcoholic, the sale of refreshments all night could lead to the McDonald's and Tesco's car park becoming a gathering place for antisocial behaviour and, more importantly, drug users. It is in a strategic position in the town, close to Market, Milton Keynes, Aylesbury, Bicester, Oxford. The late night drinkers from the pubs could continue their evening out there. Its position is ideal to attract young people, students, and late night revellers and drug dealers. Hangers about could use the Tesco's car park, and if questioned by the police if they were there, say they were on their way to McDonald's. What went on in 13 the High Street, the Grand Junction here, prior to its closing, is an example of what could happen in that area, because there was a lot of late night trouble. There was even vehicles coming in from Milton Keynes, and there was a lot of drug problems and a lot of hangers about quite late on after the pubs had closed. And prior to that, it was the gathering place for at the BP garage. This is going back quite a long while, but there were revellers there and disturbances, quite serious ones, at the BP garage. Before it was differently managed, it wasn't so well managed then, and there was a problems there, and these sort of problems could occur. I thought it could occur at the site because it's quite sheltered. You're in that cul-de-sac, the trees around, and they've got to use the same entrance out. I feel that with the university and students around, this could be a problem area too. So that's my two thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Has anybody any questions of Mrs. Robinson?
Yeah, if I could just, thank you very much for that. Please sit down. As Chairman of Planning,
yes,
I'm very aware of the problems that could be arising. We fought against the Crown Care Home, as you know.
Sorry?
We fought against the Crown Care Home, and
yes,
all,
yes.
All the points you've covered, we put up against it,
yes,
with the exception of the pedestrian footfall, which is quite a serious matter. That's something we're going to have to monitor, as you say. But we can't go back now because it's all been decided, it's agreed, and unless something drastic happens, we as a town council don't have any future say in it, but we can raise the problem of the footpath, and we'll make sure that goes on.
Well, that was what I wrote about.
Yeah, I saw what you sent to Catherine.
Oh, you said yes.
Yeah,
and then she gave me the plan, which of course I could see quite clearly, and that was last November's plan, so that was more up to date than the old one.
So there's nothing we can do unless we, at the next planning committee, consider the footpath problem. But that's up to Catherine and our clerk Paul Hobson to decide if that can go on the agenda. Regarding McDonald's, we fought against 24-hour opening and we lost. So McDonald's up at Tesco, we fought against it being open for 24 hours, but again we lost.
Well, I thought that only appeared in the papers last week.
No,
We've
this-
got until November the 15th on the paper.
well, when we passed it earlier this year, they were asking for 24 hours and we were against it. So I don't know if the paper's only just picked it
Well,
up.
that was the public notice in the paper.
Ah, okay, right. You have
And
the
it's
advantage
until
of me then.
15th of November.
I think at one point they went back on it, said it wouldn't be 24. We haven't had the planning application before us yet. We've got planning next Monday night, so I'll make sure that,
Well, I'll be
Cat.
cutting along for Catherine then.
yeah, I'll make sure Catherine's aware of it. Thank you very much for that. Thank you for both those points. Thank you, Madam.
Yeah, thank you, Mrs Robinson, for coming. We will note what your concerns, but we can't discuss them now.
No.
But it's been noted by the Chair of Planning Committee, so thank you very much for your attendance. We're now just going to have a brief pause before we move on to our main business, because Mrs Robinson's asked us to call a taxi for her. So just while our committee clerk does that, we'll just pause briefly.
Hello, can I get a taxi from Cornerstone Car Park, please? Going to the Northside Place in Buckingham? That's right, yeah, it's very cool. No, just cars car. Okay, and that will be fine. Yeah. All right, I'll see you in a minute, bye. Thank you. So just
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. As I call us to order again, welcome to full council. We are still living under the shadow of the COVID restrictions and the virus hasn't gone away. So if we can be as quiet as possible, our town clerk from his exalted position over there will be timing us and allowing 3 minutes as previously, and will alert us when the 3 minutes are up. And can we speak only as concisely as possible and only once on each issue? Thank you. Apologies for absence.
Yes, we have apologies from Councillors White and Ossie-Bergen, who are at the party conference. Councillor Ralph is attending another meeting on behalf of the Town Council. Councillor O'Donoghue for ill health, and also Councillor Collins for ill health. Oh, sorry, and Councillor Harvey, who is on holiday.
Councillor Ahmed, we have ongoing.
And we do have long-standing.
Thank you. Any declarations, says Councillor Stuchbury?
Just through you, Madam Mayor, at some point, just send our regards to Councillor Ahmed, and it might be nice that, as Mayor, you make a phone call as appropriate to see how everything's going along. Do you think that's appropriate? I think that, I think things aren't as they should be in their life, and I think we need to show that we're still here and we're still thinking about that.
Okay. Yes, I'm happy to make contact. Thank you. Any declarations of interest at this point? Then the minutes of full council on the 12th of July. It was a long while ago, but hopefully you've had the chance to read them. Councillor Stuchbury.
Suppose we accept them, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Receive and I should have said on the apologies to receive and accept the apologies from members. Everybody happy with that? Sorry. So item 4, is everybody happy to receive and agree the minutes of the full council on the 12th of July? Agreed?
Agreed.
Interim minutes on the 13th of September. Everybody happy with those? Agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. And planning committee. We've got the minutes from the 19th of July. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, if I can present those, Mayor, thank you very much. Yeah, we've got minutes, as I say, 19th of July, of the 16th of August and the 13th of September. On the 16th of August minutes, we have got a recommendation to the council proposed by Councillor Ralph, seconded by Councillor Davis, that the matter about planning application public comments no longer being visible on the Buckinghamshire Council planning portal should be brought formally to the attention of the full council, and in doing so ask that a letter is sent to the relevant cabinet members of Buckinghamshire Council to ask if they'll confirm that that's correct, and if so request sight of the relevant GDPR documentation emanating from central government, diluting the democratic process of transparency in planning applications in this way. At the discretion of full council, a copy of any such letter might usefully be forwarded to Greg Smith MP. The reasoning behind this is that when I attended the planning conference at Green Park in July, we were told that as from August, public comments could not be shown on planning applications because they broke data protection rules. We questioned this, but Mr. Nicholson, who was presenting that day, planning officer from Aylesbury, said that was government policy. And since then, we've been going in circles. So we now want to bring this formally before Buckinghamshire Council and include our MP in this.
Thank you. Has anybody got any? That's a formal proposal? Do we have a? We've got a.
It's been proposed and seconded. Yes.
So are we happy to vote on that? Are those in favour, please show. That's unanimous, and that's for the town clerk to action, I believe.
Yeah. So if I can present those 3 sets of minutes for your approval. Thank you.
No, because we're approving the plan.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. We're happy to note those minutes. Town Centre and Events Committee.
Firstly, I want to present the minutes to note, the 2 sets of minutes to note. I'd like to pay compliment to all the staff who have worked tirelessly throughout the summer for us. We had the last, what I would call summer event at the River Rinse at the weekend. We've done numerous events throughout the year, and they really fitted like 5 months events into 3. I think we should pay tribute to the effort. We even had retired councillors like Councillor Bloomfield and Councillor Smith, who came along and facilitated the day in the park with the dogs, which was a pleasant day. I mean, that saying, I think we should note in the minutes our gratitude to the amount of time they put into it, because it was a difficult thing when we took the decision in committee to go ahead with all the events. We really didn't know that what the pandemic was going to do and how it was going to wind out. So that decision was proved to be correct, and our staff were up to the challenge and did us remarkably well. One other thing I'd like to correct for you, Madam Mayor, is at the last Town Centre Events Committee, I made a misquotation and incorrect comment that Councillor Smith was never very good at reporting back to committee. That was erroneous and wrong. I also said that Councillor Smith went off on his own, did lots of work. He did actually do lots of work on his own, but he always reported back to committee. So anyone listening to that, it wasn't minutes, you could draw the conclusion that he was less than succinct and proper. But what I will say is the remark I made that after that, which was that he's a tremendous chap and an individually wonderful bloke, I'll stand by that, as he is. I mean, but I think it's important to correct that. Councillor Smith, in his time at this council, done a tremendous amount of work for this council, and he also worked tirelessly on many, many complicated things. And if any fault for not knowing what he was doing, it's entirely my own. And I would like to correct that and say thank you to him. And if I caused any offence, I apologise.
Thank you, Councillor Stuchbury.
But with that, moving on, because we're trying to be brief tonight, I would like to bring forward the agreed recommendation to council is that we need to carry on our good relationships with the Buckingham University, and it was proposed by myself and seconded by Councillor Donahue, who was unable to be here tonight, that we seek a representative to the Friends of Buckingham University. Saying that, at the meeting, you will know when the minutes are, you have seen in the minutes that we took a step forward and co-opted a representative of the university onto our committee. That's been to start this building for events, and Madam Mayor was present and took part in that, and so did many other members. But that is a separate thing than being a representative of the Friends of the University. That's a very different type thing. You get involved in very complicated, long conversations about where the university is going, and I think it's important that we do keep that going, and we do have a suitable representative from this council. So I hope that can be agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Stuchbury. Councillor Mordew.
Firstly, I'll declare that I'm already on the Friends of University, and I'd just like to say it's not as complicated as Councillor Stuchbury may have you believe. We are not part of the Senate of the university. We are just there to help students, particularly the welfare of students at the university, in such things as we have Noah's, well, used to be Noah's Ark, but children, students who have a problem, they come and handle animals they brought in. We also provide cooking lessons, because some of them come over and they don't know how to cook. We give general advice, and we try and host students where we can. And it's generally the welfare of students.
Thank you. Do we have any nominations for a representative from, well, that's it's a recommendation that we do appoint somebody. So first of all, can we vote on that proposal that we should appoint somebody to represent the town council as friends of Buckingham University? I didn't express that very well.
I abstain.
You abstain, thank you. So that's unanimous, I think. So do we have any proposals? Councillor Stuchbury?
I think it's an important decision for you, Madam Mayor, and tonight we've got lots of members of our council who are unable to be here or here. So with your permission, I seek that we seek nominations and agree the representative of the interim, so that doesn't preclude anyone who's not here from expressing a wish to do it. And if not, it's on the agenda to be agreed at interim.
Thank you. Are people happy with that?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Stuchbury. Environment Committee. Councillor White isn't here. I think Councillor Schaefer is the.
I am the deputy chair, so I'm obviously assuming that you have all read the minutes very carefully. There are 2 points where I think it might be worth drawing the full council's attention to. One is a discussion point raised by a member of the Buckingham Society, and we had a background note by Councillor White on whether to carry out additional clearing work at the Buckingham Ford. We had a discussion about this and agreed to form a working party to formulate recommendations about this, and for a future Environment Committee to propose and possibly take action. And the first meeting of that is scheduled for the 4th of November next year. We had a long and wide-ranging discussion on the Climate Emergency Action Plan, because it has a great many points, many of which are highly important. The one I will mention is that we agreed that the Estates Administration would look into options for a future parish-wide audit of carbon emissions. We did not agree that we would do such an audit, but we agreed that we should find out what it would entail.
Thank you. Thank you. So we receive those minutes. We're really happy to receive those minutes. Thank you. And the resources, Councillor Stuchbury.
I seek some clarity from you before when the committee meet, that the town clerk just do some terms of reference. I say that advisedly because both sections of the land either side are the property of Buckinghamshire Council.
I think that's not on the agenda tonight.
I'm just thinking that, you know, it's not on the agenda, but we must be careful not to double tax on these things.
Thank you. We move on to item 8, the Resources Committee. The chair isn't here. And will you remind me who's the deputy chair of Resources?
Councillor Harvey, who's not here.
Who's also not here. So in that case, the link wasn't on with the agenda, but we were sent the Resources minutes, and so they've been available to everybody. Are people happy to receive those minutes? Thank you. Everybody agree? And there's an item at the end in the confidential section to be considered. Can we move on to the action list? Bear with me one moment. Quite a few of the items are already on the agenda. Does anybody have anything to raise that isn't already on the agenda? Councillor Cole.
Yeah, it's just, it's a typo, I think. On page 2, the interim meeting, halfway down, it says, I'm proposing, without saying who I is.
I'm not sure where you are.
Yeah, we're about 10, 12 lines down.
Can you give me the reference? It would be
Yeah,
good.
9/12/20. In public health meeting to discuss healthcare provisions.
Oh, I see.
And halfway down it says I'm proposing, which doesn't make sense because it's not an individual.
Oh, yes.
The Green.
Okay. Yeah, we need to clarify that it's not worded properly. We'll do that.
Thank you. Councillor Stuchbury.
It is on the agenda
Yes, it's on the
later,
agenda.
but it's been put on the agenda, which is offering a ultra-virus opposite to what was proposed in 2018. Who asked for it to go on the agenda? And is it a business orientated matter, or why was it put on the agenda after we'd had agreed process?
Are we talking about the public health meeting?
No, it's in the action list on 9.12, and I'll talk more to it then, but it's on the agenda. So.
Thank you. Anything not on the agenda that anybody would like to raise? Town clerk.
It's just in response to Councillor Stuchbury's question. I put it on the agenda because it's been an outstanding item for so long. I thought it needed to be discussed by the council.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So shall we move on from the action list? The external audit, Appendix B applies.
If I may, Mayor.
Town clerk.
Just to remind members that this is the final report from the external audit. So as you know, we have internal audit and then external audit each year. You approved the report which we sent off to the external auditors some months ago. They've now come back, and it's a very brief and empty sheet that you see, which is a really good thing. So it's a clean audit with no issues raised, which is what we look for.
Thank you, and congratulations to the staff who've achieved that.
Yeah.
So we receive and note that.
Yeah.
Thank you. And now, item 11, Councillor Stuchbury has a motion.
Yeah, well, the motion before you, you will all be aware, and the new councillors, that the planning proceeds in two ways. One is Section 106 agreements, and one is the planning committee decisions about an application. They're very different things. The motion is to allow the town clerk, in light of decisions taken, to represent us professionally in drawing conclusions about the open space in development such as the Morton Road. This is really because we need to be well prepared, and we have our officers to do that. It is never something that a councillor would get involved in normally from the town council. And it's purely to allow the town clerk with his team of officers to start those discussions. If there's anything significant comes out of those discussions, the town clerk will take that to the appropriate committee, and those decisions would be taken by members. So it's just to get ahead, noting all the difficulties around these matters. It's not commenting on the application, it's commenting on the Section 106, which is a completely different matter to the application. And we have always been told we should be involved in these things at an earlier stage, and this would facilitate the town clerk taking appropriate action on our behalf, and if appropriate, coming back to us. If I've said anything that isn't appropriate, the town clerk will correct that.
And that's a formal proposal that we do that. Shall we have a seconder for that proposal? Thank you, Councillor Willett. Did you want to say anything?
No, just.
Does anybody have any questions or comments about this? Councillor Mordew.
Section 106 is a discussion between the planning authority and the developer, and contractual arrangements made between them. I can understand what Councillor Stuchbury is trying to do, but it doesn't actually stop the town clerk from talking to the developer anyway. It's slightly superfluous, but I'm not against it.
Thank you. Councillor Stuchbury.
Yeah, I mean, I've dealt with this council on lots and lots of applications and lots of Section 106 applications. The mantra, which has always come back to us, is we need to be involved at an early stage. And we do need, this in itself gives that verbal agreement in this council. We've never actually verbally agreed to allow the town clerk to take such actions. We've always been behind the curve. Consequently, when we enter into Section 106 discussions, we are behind the curve rather than in front of the curve, and we miss out and don't influence those. In the Environment Committee and things that we looked at, things like what equipment would go in if we were to take it over and such like. Let's not, this is Buckingham Town Council, not Buckinghamshire Council, and Buckingham Town Council has to choose its route through this. It is right that it's a job for the environment. In any Section 106 agreement you will read, it is entirely within the remit as for the Section 106 agreement for the developer to choose to go into a negotiation with a town or parish council, or choose to go into the management company. It depends how the agreement wrote. So this isn't meant to overcomplicate. It isn't meant to complicate anything to do with Buckinghamshire Council. It's all about Buckingham, and it's all about this council's decisions. And I'm happy as a town council to recommend this to the town council.
Thank you. Can we vote on this now? Are we ready to vote? Those in favour, please show. Any against? Abstentions? That motion is carried. Thank you. And that action will be for the town clerk. Item 12, Climate Champions, to receive a report from the town clerk and agree nominations to act as the town council's climate emergency champions. We've all seen the report from the town clerk. Things have moved on since we appointed the previous 4 climate champions. Councillor Stuchbury.
Through you, we are a broad church and respectful. There is, some of the climate champions are no longer members of this council, but they are
Climate champions.
And they also led the council through the climate emergency motion, and they were very much involved in bringing forward the actions of the council. So I'd like to recommend that we ask whether our free woman of the town, Councillor Ruth Mill, would like to stay involved in this, if she doesn't have voting rights, but I think it's only continuity of the work that she's put in, and I think we should recognise that, and that would be what I'd ask all the other people involved in it. We can change members, but I would seek that through you with the town clerk's agreement that we ask that if she would like to stay in touch with it.
Thank you. I'm sure that former Councillor Newell will be doing absolutely everything she's always done, because she's so passionate and committed to the environment. Councillor Tribe.
That's a noble request, but first of all, I'd like to see if any of the new councillors would like to join that as a champion, first of all, being that it was set up by 4 councillors. Seeing and knowing Councillor Newell, or ex-Councillor Newell, was on the council, but we do have an influx of new people that may want to stand in that vacant position at the moment. So I prefer to go to that first, and then we can ask said person.
Are we happy? Would anybody like to either put themselves forward or nominate somebody else at this point? Or is it the same as the previous item where we should leave it, note it, and try and agree it at interim? Councillor Stuchbury.
There's only one person on there who isn't still a member of the council, which is Councillor Mill, or retired Councillor Mill, through the town. I think that we could do both through you. We could as she's a freeman of the town, she wouldn't be in a councillor's position, but I just think continuity, but opening it up to a new member to do that. As I said, she wouldn't have like voting rights, but she would have be able to stay in touch with some body work that she was responsible for starting. I think that's what, and it's always nice to see something completed.
Councillor David.
I just wondered, thank you, Mayor, just wondered whether it is a group that would be limited to 4 members, or whether that could be expanded on anyway.
I think as one of the climate champions, we divided up the different aspects of the climate emergency plan between the 4 of us. So we reach up targeting particular aspects of the plan. That could be looked at again to divide it between more people if there were more. I mean, really, we should all be climate champions, to be honest. We all need to be climate champions. But I said this to the town clerk when we met earlier, that it's one of the things that I think is the most important thing on our agenda at the moment is the climate emergency. And I'm slightly frustrated with myself that I haven't had more time and energy to devote to it, because I think it is something it's urgent. We can't be complacent about it. Thank you.
I think opening it up to more members would possibly take some of the onerous burden that it may be to have such a small number of people on such a very important and wide-ranging subject.
Thank you. Councillor Stuchbury.
If that's a proposal, I'm happy to second that proposal, that we open it up to a wider group of people to do it. We have got, as Councillor Mark and Charlie rightly said, we have got new members coming on the council, and we need to bring new ideas, new energies and stuff to it. And we should thank ourselves for having so many new members. And this would be an opportunity for them to work closely with the older members on this and bring in the energies. So I think we should extend the membership of it to those people, not obviously the whole council, because then that becomes the council. But I think we should open it up to at least another 2 to 3 members. 7 seems an appropriate number to me, and that way you can spread the work out evenly. Like so, that's a proposal. I'll second it.
Councillor Hetherington.
I'd just like to say, as one of the new members, I'm feeling the spotlight is on me, but I'm feeling that I just simply don't have the expertise. Unless I was able to work with somebody who does know what they're doing. So the idea about opening it up to spread the knowledge sounds like a good one to me.
Councillor Willett.
I'd just like to say, on your point there, expertise is gained through experience. And I think that I'd be willing to put myself forward for the climate change champion if they're going to broaden out the positions, but definitely like to work with you on this. You're thinking of putting yourself forward.
Can I just ask our committee clerk, who's been instrumental in driving this, whether she's got any views on this?
There wasn't a membership limit from the original discussions, as you said, Margaret. It was there's 5 objectives in the climate action plan, which were divvied up amongst the original champions. I think it's a great idea to have more members around the table. One of the first things that I would be keen that climate champions started looking at with myself and Paul is our commitment to deliver some sort of public meeting, public engagement. And when you look across the board, different local authorities have delivered that in many, many different ways. Obviously with COVID, another element there in terms of public engagement that we need to take on board. So it's really looking at what direction we want to do with that, how we want to present ourselves with this first engagement. It's such a big topic. Where do we want to start? So for me, it's an initial working group meeting with as many 3 interested bodies as we can. So I'm not an expert. I don't think any of us really would claim to be an environmental expert, and I think we can all learn from each other. And it's about pooling all of our interests and shared experiences to try and get something that's the right fit. So yeah, more than merrier.
And certainly we could invite former Councillor Newell to that meeting as well. Are people happy for us to push forward in that way? So over to you to try and convene a meeting.
Absolutely. So if it's best if I try and convene the meeting, and then if you're interested in attending, just let me know your availability. You don't perhaps have to set it in stone.
We could do a doable poll.
Yeah, I love those.
I enjoy your polls.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that. I think that's a satisfactory outcome for that very important item. COVID-19 update, verbal report from the town clerk.
Very relevant.
Yeah, so this is a standing item which I've left our agendas for now. The COVID, apart from the fact that I'm not in the office because I'm positive at the moment, we are back in the office. Staff are working fairly normally in the office, being as careful as we can, keeping a distance as carefully as we can, wearing masks when moving around as best we can. But moving back in the office with everybody is crossing a bit of a threshold of risk, to be honest. So I am quite impressed that nobody's caught it from me. I think that's a really good sign that we've got some healthy practices in place.
Right, thank you. Councillor Stuchbury.
I think we should thank the town clerk for coming to the meeting tonight, even though he's obviously feeling not 100%, and it is quite a poignant thing given a COVID update when you got COVID sort of really brings it home that we are far from out the woods with these things, and thank you for his time tonight.
Yeah, going the extra mile tonight, even though you've not left your house, you've gone the extra mile. Thank you, town clerk. And we do wish you and your family well, you know, that it doesn't have a sting in its tail.
Thank you.
Item 14, the Buckingham Neighbourhood Plan, Vale of Aylesbury Plan. I note that Sheena McMurtry's here on Zoom as well. And we're expecting a verbal report from the town clerk.
If I'll just give a brief update from the subcommittee. Apologies, I haven't yet circulated the minutes from the subcommittee. Essentially, we talked through the impact of VALP and came up with 3 things we need to take forwards now in terms of the neighbourhood plan. One is we need to be clear that the neighbourhood plan does still stand, and while there's a part of it that has gone, so site M is now not accepted within VALP, actually the majority of our neighbourhood plan still stands and needs to be defended. So one of Sheena's next pieces of work is to build an evidence base for our 35% social housing, because that VALP does enable us to carry on that and does support our neighbourhood plan having that. But all advice we've had makes it very clear that we will have to justify that should it be challenged by developers. So it's to defend the neighbourhood plan as it is, but more substantially to have a really long-term look at, rather than just doing a bit of a refresh, actually ask the big question around, do we need to go back to square one and start the neighbourhood plan again? So that's going to be the job for the neighbourhood plan committee for the next few months, to really work that through. What would that look like? What might that mean? Because actually what we did with the neighbourhood plan was took a really bold decision and made some bold steps in terms of, well, actually, and possibly uncomfortable steps in terms of what will the town look like in 20 years' time and how do we get there? And if we're going to have so many houses, well, let's influence it and have them where we want them and how we want them. Well, actually, we may need to start from the beginning again, so to speak, and go back and do that again for 20 years from where we are in the light of VALP. And the other thing is how we can influence the Buckinghamshire plan, because Buckinghamshire Council are now full ahead working towards the new Buckinghamshire plan in a few years' time. So we want to influence that for the sake of Buckingham as well. So those are really big pieces of work, probably bigger and who knows, more expensive than we thought they might have been. But we'll bring those decisions to councillors in the fullness of time in the next few months.
Thank you. Is there anything you wanted to say, Sheena, on that?
No, I think Paul has covered it very well, and to stress again that the neighbourhood plan still stands in a partnership with VALP, and we have got to be robust, however, on the 35% housing, just to echo what Paul was saying, because I think that will be challenged, and we've got to convince Buckinghamshire Council to support us on that with strong evidence.
Thank you. Anybody got any questions? Councillor Try.
Yeah, if we start again, does that mean we've then got to get it reapproved through all that process that we did last time?
Yes.
Well, that was a very tortuous path. We probably got some skill in that now, but then getting it reapproved into the VALP plan is, have we not missed the boat?
Well, I'll go, Sheena. Well, the VALP is what it is. So we are VALP is what it is, and we are where we are. So we're not, in a way, we're not interested in VALP where we're planning ahead now. We're interested in the new Buckinghamshire plan. So VALP is today, the Buckinghamshire plan is tomorrow. So this is partly around what work can we do to influence the Buckinghamshire plan to say what we want it to say, because Buckinghamshire Council are not going to be able to put a lot of detail into a Buckinghamshire wide plan. We will be able to put a lot more detail into it than they will. So it's about what's the future. And the other thing is, we were kind of heading in that direction anyway. So unless you're just going to tweak it very subtly, unless you go back to referendum, there's not much you can change in it. So you would almost have to let the neighbourhood plan very gradually die as things get tweaked and change around us, and we can't go back on it again. Or at some point you make the bold decision to go back to referendum again, because you can tweak it, but unless if you want to do anything more than tweaking it, in reality, we'll probably end up going back to referendum. So if we want a thriving, viable neighbourhood plan in 5-10 years' time, then I think we'll have to go back to referendum. But we've learned a load of lessons, and there's a lot of good practice out there. So I'm sure it'll be easier than it was last time.
Thank you. Councillor Stuchbury.
I would say that what the town clerk says is we need to go back to where we were. And the other thing is, when we wrote the neighbourhood planning, we were working to a 2013 theory. And that was we look mirroring a plan from 2004. So and now we've got a Vale plan, which I won't discuss what I think about it, but we've got a Vale plan. And so what I think we need to do is look at it in the round and try to shadow what Buckinghamshire is going to come forward with. Policies which are in the Vale plan may be retained within the Buckinghamshire plan. They may be amended, but the one thing that you all remember, that at some point there will be a housing number comes out, and that housing number will be how they allocate sites. Now, that will be difficult negotiation, but I expect that if it went the way it went last time, interestingly enough, out of the growth that in the Vale plan, 3,000 homes have been come forward since the Vale plan. We've got 3,000 more residents in Buckingham than we did when the plan was originally foreseen in 2013. So we've grown as a community by 3,000 more people. So we will possibly grow again. And it's how we grow and what that growth brings to Buckingham, which is what I believe we can do in a neighbourhood plan. Look at all those things that have been on our wish list for years, such as we've always wanted a cultural centre in Buckingham. We've always looked at those sort of things and where we go with it and where would it be and what would we do in conjunction with growth. I see it as an opportunity. I also see the fact that it's a new council with new members who will bring their own personal views to it on the environment, on housing and whatever. So I think we are at early stages, but they keep saying at Buckinghamshire Council, they want people to do neighbourhood plans and they want to work with them. So we should do what would effectively be a revamped neighbourhood plan. I think Sheena did an excellent job on the last one. It was the fact that Aylesbury didn't recognise our excellent plan and what it did and changed it, which was the problem. That's not to go into that great detail. I think that we take what the town clerk says, the 3 points. Also, there will be things like Article 4 directives and things that come in as we go through, which we'll have to look at. So it's going to be very busy work, and we will have to go out to referendum. But if we don't work with them on what information comes by, we will hopefully won't have the repeat challenge this time, where we had a made neighbourhood plan, which the district amended all the sites and put in sites where there wasn't any, and took sites out where there was, and took away a traffic infrastructure from the Cambridge Arc. Hopefully, it's an opportunity to consider all those things again, because what decisions we make, Chairman, will be for the next 20 to 30 years, and we need to be there to make it right, because who knows Buckingham better than the Buckingham Town Council.
Thank you. Councillor Mordew.
There's a statutory duty on planners to take into account a neighbourhood plan. They can't just ignore it. They must consider all the implications when considering any housing development. Also, most of the houses that are allocated in the Vale of Aylesbury local plan have been built in Buckingham. There's only a small number that haven't been built yet. Most of the sites have been allocated anyway. And I think that the future is to concentrate on Buckinghamshire Plan now, and not we'll just keep an eye on that, because that is there, but it's the future that really counts for more.
Thank you. Shall we move on? We note that. Thank you. Thank you, Town Clerk, and thank you, Sheena. Item 15, creating a vision for the Oxford-Cambridge Arc. I hope most of us have had an opportunity to look at this. I know Councillor Cole's got some views as Chair of Planning.
Yeah.
Over to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Tonight there is a town and parish briefing at Aylesbury, which I was invited to some weeks ago. It should have been last Monday at the Oculus. It was then moved to be a Zoom meeting last Monday. And then on Friday, it was announced that, Friday last week, it was announced it had been moved till tonight. I protested in quite a strong view to Simon Garwood, who's the localism manager, strategic lead for town and parish councils. Said it's critical to Buckingham this meeting. As chairman of planning, it was imperative that I attend on behalf of my council to be briefed. It's not acceptable it's been changed at such short notice. I also noted the cabinet was due to discuss it last week, so how could it hear our concerns when our briefing had been moved till after the cabinet meeting? He came back and said, apologies for rescheduling. I'll pass on your request for an alternative date or special briefing. I haven't heard anything for 12 days from him, so I'm afraid that might have gone out of the window now. But I just find it disrespectful that, having made plans to attend this meeting in Aylesbury, it's just cancelled on, for whatever reason, moved to a night that's not convenient for us because we have a meeting here. I'm sure other town parishes may have meetings tonight, and I'd just like the council to be aware of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you have any comments on what was in this document separately, or?
No, I mean, I read it, and we obviously will be discussing it at length when we at a future date. It's a big subject for tonight.
This particular consultation has a response date of October the 12th.
Yeah. So
we've got fairly urgent issues to address tonight. Councillor Stuchbury, then Councillor Willett.
Let's support Councillor Cole in his less than content about the Buckinghamshire Council of the day. That is not good. I understand the vision of the Cambridge Arc. You will be aware that Buckinghamshire Council has removed itself from the spatial arc people because they saw it. My understanding, Councillor Morgan would probably say, if it's not that size here, that the council saw the arc was overburdening and could have placed houses within the Buckingham Buckinghamshire Arc area, which could have been decided outside it. So that was the rationale of the council not wishing to be part of it. The idea that it's a spatial arc and the vision, I don't quite share the vision, and I think we are really concerned about. My view is I'm concerned about in several points. it could overrule the Buckinghamshire Plan, which, whether we agree or don't agree with the emerging Buckinghamshire Plan, I am really concerned that for the first time Buckinghamshire has the legal right to do its own development plan in conjunction with highways and whatever, just at the point this comes through. And I think that's one serious concern. The other thing is, it is a plan without infrastructure. There's no infrastructure to support this plan. And the other point, being a very strong point, is the government's development proposals, whether they go forward or not, the white paper on development would suggest that we'll have very little to do with the types of development, and the council will have very little to do with where that development goes. So lastly, I am concerned this is a government to council. Forget the makeup of the council's representing our interests through the officers. And I think this is a very abrasive document, and we have all been here before when we had theoretical documents about HS2. And just as a point, the whole consultation around this was built around the theory that they were going to bring through a Cambridge Expressway, which fortunately they cancelled. But of course, that infrastructure's now gone with it. I don't think that the idea of it's sustainable. And in its early stages, it stated 2 developments the size of Milton Keynes would be put across the Cambridge arc. That is 100,000 houses. And those, if we had another city the size of Milton Keynes put somewhere in North Buckinghamshire, that in itself would be both challenging to the environment, plus water resources, plus fuel, plus energy, plus sewage, plus the fact that it would be standalone and no infrastructure. And I think that this is blue sky thinking, but very with shadows and storms ahead. That's my view.
Thank you. Councillor Willett.
I just want to harp in on what Councillor Cole was saying earlier about the shocking way that Buckinghamshire Council has sort of disregarded us, and it seems to be us more broadly. Councillor Hetherington and I serve on the environment, we sort of partake in the Environment Community Board, and it is not acceptable when we are briefed at the last minute. We don't have any sort of information where these meetings are attending. We get the dates, but we don't get a Zoom pass or whichever. And we get constant, you know, the last one was an absolute joke. I mean, I think,
can I just say, we're on the Oxford-Cambridge Arts at the moment, so can we focus on that?
But I think it's just unacceptable that we're sort of, you know, sidelined in this way, and I would argue that we should raise a complaint with all their conduct.
Right, thank you. Councillor Stuchbury had his hand up.
Those things that I said, I'm sure were proposals and concerns. I think that could be the broad, with agreement, a broad outline of our response by the 12th. If other people feel that that wasn't a true representation of our concerns, let's not treat the actions of Buckinghamshire Council and the government. They're very different things. Whatever the makeup of Buckinghamshire Council, it's there to look after the Buckinghamshire area. The government remit is different, and that my concerns are at this point with the council. They are with the affected. So those things I said, I hope if Nina got them, they would be things that, with agreement, we would recommend that our concerns to the consultation. I'm sure officers can put some detail around that as we try and be brief tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Schaefer, you didn't want to.
Yeah, it's fine, we've talked enough about it.
Yeah, so I propose
the issue now is if we agree tonight how to respond to this creating a vision for the Oxford-Cambridge Arc consultation by October the 12th, or whether we task 2 or 3 people to come up with a response. Town Clerk.
I was mostly going to say what you just said, Mayor, but also it would be possible to task 2 or 3 people to do that, but then to agree for the planning meeting next Monday to agree the final response on behalf of the full council.
Did you have something new to say?
Yeah, it is new. I just made a proposal which wasn't seconded, that we consider those things in it. Am I taking it through you and the chair of planning that will take those views as a starting point for the planning committee on this?
May I second the proposal?
Yeah.
Proposal, can I be very clear what the proposal is?
Well, I didn't want to go over it again, but I think Nina would have taken it down. I can do it again if you want.
Can you read it, Nina?
I wasn't brief.
You mentioned 3 concerns, Robin. So, it's obviously this will be reworded, so that the ARC would ultimately overrule highways elements that are mentioned within the emerging Buckinghamshire Plan. You're concerned that there's no infrastructure that's outlined to support the ARC, the Cambridge Oxford ARC, and that the white paper, the government's white paper on development proposals speak against this, because the insinuation is that town and parish councils would have very little to do with where developments would be located.
In brief, yeah, I think we can tighten that up with the chair of planning on Monday. I think that'll do now, because otherwise I'll just go off onto one again.
Councillor Schaefer.
Then just to add to one point that I think Councillor Stuchbury mentioned, but which is important, that there are significant environmental concerns with these plans. They have to do with infrastructure, but they also have to do with a very large swathe of countryside being turned into
desert,
into another Milton Keynes, and that this is a concern to the town council and presumably to other parishes as well, but we don't want to speak for them. I think that point was missing from the summary.
Yeah, thank you.
So, again, can I be clear? This proposal, which has been seconded and as outlined already, is that just go straight to planning next Monday, or do we need 2 or 3 more people? We can just take it straight to planning without further.
I'm happy with that. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm happy the chair of planning.
Can we vote on that proposal then, please? Those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you for that. And in some ways, similarly, item 16, the community governance review, that we've got till November the 7th for this, to receive, discuss and agree a response to the consultation questions from the local government boundary commission, which is in relation to the number of councillors for the future from 2025 on Buckinghamshire Council. Councillor Schaefer.
I think it is important for us to respond to this because the way in which Bucks Council works affects all town and parish councils within that area. I would recommend that we support a number below 100. And I am a bit agnostic on whether that should be 98 or 80, but I believe it ought to be below 100. And that is predominantly in order to improve the manageability of the Buckinghamshire Council. It is in nobody's interest to have a very large council which is by its very size difficult to manage and operates with problem. And there is also, of course, the question of the cost of a council this large, but it's mostly a question of the functioning, and that is what I would recommend, that we argue for a council of less than 100 members.
Thank you. Councillor Stuchbury, then Councillor Davies.
It is a strange question to ask town councils how to recollect the work within a Buckinghamshire council, because I can assure you that I am really very busy. And I'm attending meetings all the week, and I expect Councillor Wardrow's attending all the week. We have to recognise this council has grown since the original proposal to the area bit, since the 98 proposal, which the Secretary of State proposed, which is the lower figure. They're not going to go below the 98 figure because there's no legislation supporting that. So you either go for the 98, which is 2 per ward, but we don't even know what the wards are going to be at this stage. So I would think that commenting on the amount of councils with the amount of information that you'd have about it, if you look at the amount of committees that there are on the council, and at the moment, the representation on the council is immensely skewed towards the majority, if there's a large majority. I'm content at this stage because the Boundary Commission, I can assure you, will act taking all the views in it. I don't think we should get into the business of choosing a number, because unless you can name all the committees on the council, all the responsibilities of councils, when those meetings meet and how it is, and with 147, which is obviously a very large number, it's a snooker, 147, isn't it? I think the 120 will probably come down anyway with the Boundary Commission. So I don't think there's any point in going against what Buckinghamshire Council recommended at this point, because the Boundary Commission will be the people who negotiate. It's interesting. We can also, the next question in it will be boundaries, which political parties will fight over the boundaries. I think we shouldn't try to gerrymander a number at this point.
Okay.
We should go with 120 and be done with it.
Thank you, Councillor Davies, isn't it? No, Councillor Mahoney.
Okay, I will abstain on this one because I'm on the Standards Committee and we will be discussing what's one of the items this
It's on the agenda.
Yeah. Currently is 147 councillors, and there were extensive discussions with the Boundaries Commission in the last council. The boundary favoured 98. The problem is that it's a workload, and members were asked how much time they spent on council business, and we came up with a figure of 120. But the problem is you've got a council which is very large, and you've only got to look or listen into one of the council meetings. If you're willing to spend 4 to 5 hours listening to it, you realise how long and big they are. I'm not going to say what I think is the right figure, because you can put in separately and independently to town council what you feel. And I'd be inclined to do that anyway. I've already submitted my suggestion, but I just wanted to give you some background. It is important. There's a separate discussion going at the moment, which is about the parliamentary boundaries. That's distinct from local government boundaries. And there may be a small adjustment of wards to get the right figure. But if you have a drastic change of wards, it creates a lot of work and a lot of problems. So just go on whatever figure you feel would be appropriate. Bearing in mind you're looking at a council which goes between Biddleston and Amersham and High Wycombe. You know, it's enormous unitary. I've been publicly said, I recorded that I don't agree with it, but we are where we are. We'll make the best job of it we can.
Thank you. That's really helpful to hear from our two Buckinghamshire councillors as well. And we've got this suggestion from Councillor Schaefer that
And an alternative suggestion from me.
as well, that we stick to below 100. We don't have to say anything, of course, is an option. Councillor Willett.
For me, I don't see how Buckinghamshire, well, in the Buckinghamshire Council, as 2 wards, Buckingham East and West, can be represented by anything less than 3 councillors. We are just simply too large of a, town to sort of, for 2 councillors to work in each ward. I'm not really new to this game, but I personally think that the workload should also be, respectful of councillors and what is humanly possible. But I don't think it should be below 100. I definitely think that it should be below 147. But my suggestion would be the 120 mark.
So how do we move forward on this? We've got this.
No, is that a second of the 120?
So you, Councillor Stuchbury was proposing 120, that we support 120. and Councillor Willetts seconded that. Did anybody want to second the proposal for Nigel?
So can I just raise a point of order,
Shall I?
Madam Mayor? Surely our district councillors should be declaring an interest in this because this could affect their future.
I'll take that under advisement, in which case we shouldn't comment on anything to do with Buckingham Town Council. We shouldn't be in the meetings and we shouldn't be here. I'm here at this point in time speaking as a Buckingham Town Councillor. If you think I'm not speaking as a Buckingham Town Councillor, I'll have to ask the Town Clerk to advise me whether that's incorrect. What I was doing when I said about the workload, I was speaking as a Buckinghamshire Council, trying to make you realise what the workload is. I last week was in meetings from Monday till Thursday night at 10 o'clock. But no, it's 9 o'clock when I finish my meetings, plus the parishes, plus everything we have to do. I don't think you've got a concept of the amount of work that we do. I have to work cross-party in a ward, and you have to do that. I don't think people have got the concept of that. That's what I was putting the context there, why I propose we leave it at 120. My view is the Boundary Commission will change that, but I don't think we should be in the position here, based upon, unless you can demonstrate better knowledge of the working of the council than what I can. And unfortunately Councillor Morgan is not in a position, because he's on the Standards Committee, to give you that information. But based on my workload, of which if you were putting it down to 80 councillors, you would not get, and there's a legal requirement in law that every person is represented after a certain amount by a councillor, and you cannot go below that. So I would take the advice of the officers on Buckinghamshire Council, and the fact that the Standards Committee will look at it, and if there needs to be amendment, I think the Standards Committee will amend it appropriately. That's not being overlooked, and if I would want the evidence to support a lower number. There is no evidence to support a lower number, but I would ask Town Clerk who thinks that I'm speaking inappropriately, because if he does, that means that you'll have to ask for all the Buckinghamshire Council to leave Buckingham Town Council.
Town Clerk, then Councillor Schaefer.
I'm not ever going to advise councillors whether they should or shouldn't declare an interest on a particular subject. You could argue it potentially affects more people around the table, because actually the question is who will it affect at the next election. So it potentially affects anybody who might stand for a unitary seat at the next election, rather than those who are currently in post, which makes it a slightly more flexible question, and we don't know who that will be, do we? We don't know who will be standing yet or not.
Thank you.
So to that extent, if you stopped people voting, you might stop quite a lot of people voting around the table.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Schaefer.
I think in the light of the discussion, I'm not changing my view, but I am changing my proposal. I'm changing the proposal that as a town council, we should not take a vote on what we are proposing, and that the town council should not, as the town council, respond to this consultation, and that we can all, as individuals, as individual citizens of this or inhabitants of this town and of this county, propose or put forward our own views to this.
Thank you. Councillor Try.
I would say this consultation gone mad. It's come down to too lower granularity to make, we can all have a decision, pick a number out of the air, but we are too low to make any informed decision on a particular number, because we're just a little part of the jigsaw puzzle. And so therefore, I will not be voting for any number.
Thank you. I think what's the discussion to me as outlined this evening is the tension between managing a very large council and also the representation, the democratic aspect of not having so many people, so that it's easier to manage and more cost effective, because it put the burden of work onto fewer people, but also that the constituents won't have as direct an access to their representatives as they would do with a greater number. So there's a real tension there, isn't there?
Just lastly, if I can comment, that's what the Boundary Commission is there for. Yeah. They know gerrymandering when they see it, and they recognise gerrymandering for what it is. And I'm comfortable that as a Buckinghamshire Council, though I'm not on the standards, doing a very good job of looking at these things, but they have all the problems that we've got within this table, but with a little bit more understanding of the workload.
Thank you, because you've spoken twice already, and that's the third. So
I know well.
Councillor Mordew.
I just want to say the Boundaries Commission is independent of government. I think that's the point you have to realise. Also, I reckon I probably spent something like 50 hours on this last year. Just talking about this one item of standards, because what was going on. So there are detailed discussions and work that have gone on. Councillor Shillif's proposal, I think that's really obviously up to Town Council to decide what we wish to do. But nobody does realise, as Councillor Stuchbury said, how many hours we actually put in. You know, I don't like giving long reports anyway, but you only got to look at a number of parishes and parish meetings, and Councillor Stuchbury probably has a harder job because he's the only Labour representative on the West Ward, whereas I've got 3, and we split it up between us. And that's just representing parish interests without looking at individual problems, you know, which vary from housing benefit to green spaces to planning and all the rest of them. There is a lot of work, but it's still a matter of running a council meeting, because that's the only democratic process we have of actually making an actual decision. I was much happier on Zoom. We're coming down to Aylesbury, but that's been taken away from us by the government, which is why we're here tonight, and we're not on Zoom.
Thank you. So we have a proposal still, do we, for 100 that we, or I think there was an alternative around that we don't make a response at all, but we should vote on the proposal for 120, which was seconded by Councillor Willett. Thank you. Are those in favour of that? 3. Thank you. Are those against? Okay, abstentions. Thank you. I think that proposal is lost. So the alternative is possibly that we respond individually and don't make a specific proposal from the Buckingham Town Council. Is that the will of the meeting?
That's the view from Councillor Schaefer's. Is that a proposal from you?
I can make it a proposal.
It was seconded by Councillor Troy in effect, wasn't it? Councillor Troy.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's
So
a
can we have that
proposal.
vote on that proposal that we respond individually and
Don't put a figure.
put a figure on it?
What he's trying to say is we do not put a figure.
I think the suggestion is, or the proposal is, that as a town council, we do not respond at all, because we can only respond with a figure, so there's nothing else to respond to.
Okay, those in favour of that proposal, please show. Those against? Abstentions? I think that's carried. Thank you. Thank you for that. We now move on to public health care. The first item is the Lacehill Medical Centre Consultation, which has to be responded to by November the 16th. And it's a question of, very similar really, how and whether we respond. Councillor Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, this exercise, the last planning committee, about this consultation, members will be aware that the planning permission for Lacehill Health Centre runs out on December the 24th, Christmas Eve. This consultation, which appears to be a consultation completely throwing everything that they'd already put in the plans out of the window and starting all over again. So we're presuming that they won't have started work by December 24th. We did have before us at the last planning committee meeting an application for outline for detailed landscaping permission. We haven't had it for the buildings yet, but we've had it for the landscaping, which we opposed on the grounds of insufficient evidence, insufficient parking, the fact that a lot of the plants they were proposing were toxic or poisonous, etc., etc. Just for members' interest, those who weren't at the planning committee, the appeals against non-determination at Verney Close to demolish that surgery and build 8 houses and the appeal for non-determination at North End, so I've got that wrong around, Verney Close is to build 6 flats. Verney North End is to build 8 houses. Both of those were thrown out by the inspector on the grounds that there would have been loss of community services, and he very strongly said the Buckingham Neighbourhood Plan has specified those sites are for community services, and that cannot be changed. It cannot be used for housing. So that in itself, I imagine it has been a bit of a bombshell for Swan practice, because these are obviously 2 of their money pots that were going to go towards building the Lacehill Centre with grants and other things. So that's the current position at the moment, which is obviously of great concern to us in Buckingham. It's of great concern to Swan practice. I just thought I'd praise the council tonight. That's the current situation.
Thank you, that's really helpful.
Good, exactly.
Councillor Stuchbury.
Both Councillor Mordew and myself work together on health and scrutiny. We are part of the scrutiny committee. We have raised jointly, to be fair, wouldn't it, Councillor Mordew, our concerns around the whole process, and are in discussions with the chair. One of the things which we cited at the last meeting was the fact that the equality impact assessment, which has been not completed yet, which the equality impact assessment is what they have to do to demonstrate that the change in service is possible without erratically damaging the health and well-being of the community. The legal requirement, and we asked for it in 2018, and it's still not been done, and we cited it at the last meeting. We were asked, I think perhaps take most of the conversation, Howard and I probably need to talk about that, but there are concerns, I think, within the consultation in brief. It's not a proper consultation about service provision. It doesn't actually say what services are going to be in there. It doesn't say what's going to be in there. It's a consultation about the present situation that the Swan practice operating practices, in effect, about do you like front camp against seeing someone on the phone and how do you think it works? But that's not actually service provision, is it? Those questions are possibly not anything to do with the new provision. It asks you other questions about what you want to do. So I have concerns about the veracity and the detail of the consultation, but it is what they put in. And Councillor Mordew did make the committee aware at the early stage about the planning issues when we discussed this, which he and I asked it to be discussed some time back, didn't we? And we are working very closely on this because it's about our community. But I do think that the planning issues must be taken outside in planning terms, and the consultation is a medical consultation which will run. Whether it's for the Swan practice to demonstrate how they're going to complete this, it does seem quite a hard job for them to complete it. And we are not in a position where we thought we would have been when we were first talking about these matters in late 2017 and early 2018. I'd be interested if Councillor Mordew shares my concerns, but I think the detail about what I might say about the consultation, I think I'm going to talk with Howard about how we respond to that separately. But I think that's my concern as a member of the Health and Scrutiny Committee.
Thank you. So Councillor Mordew, and then I wonder, because Councillor Trios our representative, I think, or is a representative on the focus group, if he'd got anything to add. But Councillor Mordew.
Just I've followed this since the new medical centre was proposed in, I think it was 2013. And it's been a long and checkered history, but I won't bore you with all that. This survey really comes about because there was a proposal for a medical centre from memory, I think it was Hadnam, and there wasn't a proper consultation taken out. And a lot of people created a lot of furor about that. So although this is under the name of Swan practice, it's actually a survey that's been instigated by the CCG. I, on the one hand, see it as a delaying tactic, because by the time it's in, it's almost at the point at which planning permission runs out. On the other hand, the matter that came before planning regarding reserve matters can only be considered as far as landscaping goes. But they left it very late to bring that up. And that is their own fault. I declare an vested interest because I do want to see a medical centre for my own good in the future. And I don't want some second-hand place in Buckingham. And all the surgeries we got, there's only one that's disability friendly. The one down Verney Close was a nurses' home, which converted as best means possible for as a GP. And again, if I vote in this one, I could, and I've got to be very careful on a lot of things, whether somebody, i.e. a developer or one side of it, takes my vote as a means of going against what has been decided. It's quite a complicated situation for me. So I won't vote in this, but I can assure you I'm 100% for a new surgery. And you've only got to look at the survey and what's been put forward. You see the conditions that the doctors, the nurses and the staff are working under. And I've seen a suitcase trundled up between the admin centre and the surgery because they're not within one place. And we want the best possible surgery for Buckingham. The development of the houses probably was a setback financially, but it will not see the end of this project, I'll assure you. And I won't say any more than that. It will happen in some shape or form, and it will benefit the residents, but you may not get all the services you should have. And it'll be an ongoing evolvement of medical services in Buckingham. But you cannot expect our medical staff in Buckingham to carry on working under the conditions they are now. Anyway,
thank you.
You might gather my opinion.
Thank you. Councillor Try, did you want to add anything?
Well, just it's easy from the focus group. We haven't had a meeting since pre-COVID. And when we did meet, things were being discussed with all the stakeholders, not just the Swan practice, all of their partners as well to get the funding and the services as well. So things were going ahead, and the members of that focus group were pulling in questions from their contacts, which is what it was all for. But we haven't had one. So I've spoken to the business manager at Swan, and they will resume, but at the moment they're going through this consultation, as you've just heard, and that's their focus. From a member of that focus group, I'm sure, as has also been said tonight, that the lack of further development and selling on those properties which they own is now causing a big void in their business plan. It was always a worry in their business plan how they were putting it all together, because some of the other stakeholders within the NHS sort of envelope weren't looking forward enough in planning. It was only a short term, and they really wanted to look for a longer term, and that was causing a little bit of an issue. And has been said by the Swan, you know, a lot of their families live in the town and they want a good service, but at the moment they don't have any premises to do it with. And that's sort of where we rounded up a couple of years ago. And we are where we are at the moment.
The issue now is we've got till November the 16th, whether we can come to a conclusion this evening or whether we need to task 2 or 3 people and bring a proposal back to interim. We have got time to do that. Councillor Margie and then Councillors Moldew and Stuchbury wanted to.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, I just want to support Councillor Try. It is very frustrating, and there are powers who are trying to frustrate the swan practice from going ahead with this without naming who they are. The town is growing, the practice is under constant pressure at the moment, and it's getting with the new housing in Aussie Way being given the go ahead, it's going to get worse. And it's no point people complaining we can't get appointments. The reason you can't get appointments, there's too many people on their books at the moment. There's 30,000 at the moment and increasing constantly, considering that the population of the town is only 15,000. So that all the outlying villages who also use the swan practice, and it is the situation is desperate. I feel so frustrated that it's taking so long just to get a medical centre. When you can build a McDonald's, you know.
Councillor Moody.
Well, I just said one of the problems I have, I am a director of Health Watch Bucks. So that's another reason why I don't want to vote in this.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stuchbury, then Councillor.
I think it's a given from everyone that we want improved health facilities. That's an absolute given. What we have to do is respond to a consultation, Madam Mayor, in an appropriate way as we see it. I think that it seems proper that we go away and look at this and not back opinions around the council chamber on what we should do based on all the knowledge we know. We must park our opinions about planning and the difficulties around planning, because that's not part of the consultation. Consultation is about our provision and what we want to fill that in. We shouldn't, that is a separate issue. And by filling the consultation in, we're doing no more than what other residents hopefully have done in the town, put their personal opinion. I've filled it in personally. I expect everybody else around here has took that opportunity. What we would be looking for is, I think for you, Madam Mayor, is to go away and look at this and give a combined view, taste, and maybe not bat it around in a meeting like this, trying to say we don't, or he or she doesn't. I think everybody around here agrees we want better services.
So is that a proposal that we task 2 or 3 people to come back to?
Bring it back a proposal to an appropriate meeting that the town clerk.
I'm happy to second that. Unconscious Councillor Davies had her hand up.
All I wanted to say was I find it, and I'm sure the Swan practice also finds it incredibly frustrating that this new health centre was mooted around about the same time as Brackley's new health centre. Brackley's new health centre has been up and running for over a year now, and it was a superb facility.
And Aylesbury.
So we've got a proposal on the table. Are we happy to vote on that proposal? So those in favour.
The proposal was that because of the complex nature of this.
Can maybe the committee clerk read back what he's noted?
I was thinking that to form a working group to consider the consultation and offer a combined view on behalf of the town council, be considered an interim full council on the whatever the date is.
Thank you. Councillor Trizat, acceptable view? Yep.
I hear the proposal, thank you.
Thank you. Can we vote on that proposal, please? Those in favour, please show. Those against? Thank you. So we need to find willing volunteers. Probably only need to meet once to report back to interim council. You're happy to? Councillors Hetherington and Davies?
Yeah.
Do we need more than 2 people? 2 people?
Call, are you going to be on it?
No, I'll step back on this chairman plan.
Just that's what you need to be on it.
I can always give advice, but I won't be on the committee.
Councillor Try's views on it as well, as soon as he voted against the proposal.
Would you be willing to join that?
Yeah, okay.
Because you've obviously got quite a lot of past knowledge. So we've got 3 people. Are we happy with that?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And report back to interim council. Interim council. So you've got it's interim council's the 1st of November, which must be 4 weeks today, I think.
Right, 4 weeks.
Okay. We'll leave it with you to convene that. And then the second aspect of public health care is the public health meeting. And the town clerk has provided us with an outline really of the background to the where this came from, which is, I think 3 years ago, we agreed to hold this meeting. Just trying to get to that part of the agenda. Right. So it's the recommendation is that councillors decide whether or not to go ahead with the public meeting as decided in 2018. Councillor Stuchbury.
I think I should speak on it as I supported the motion in 2018. Don't think anything's changed. I think that it wasn't just about how provisions and SWAN practice which everybody focused on. It's a bigger issue than the SWAN practice. It's about adult social care and the way community care and health, the way that Buckingham's going to be looked after in the future. It's also about giving people opportunity to ask about their local hospital. And I provided an email to you all tonight, which I hope you had a chance to read, of my own private correspondence on the hospital, which is a reasonably positive response in the sense that their ambition is to do X, Y, and Z. But 2018, we told Buckingham in a loud and proud that we were going to have a public meeting. That was restored because everyone focused on the SWAN practice. It wasn't really the biggest issue. The SWAN practice wasn't what we wanted to consult about. It's about all the other sorts of things, the way that we get access to all the other care services in Buckingham, which so evidently do. And as the emerging way that elderly and social care is going to emerge, and the way that people are going to be treated closer to home rather than going to a home, and how that works, and community health, it's a big question. I think we need to say we're going to have the meeting, and I think we need to agree a proper parameter for that meeting. What we shouldn't be doing is having a meeting to set up any individual organisation to be pilloried. I don't think that's what we want. What we want is, I would suggest if we go to the meeting, is we ask people to send their questions in advance so that we can give the people a chance to be able to give a proper response. And we generally, as councillors, allow the public to ask the questions, not the councillors, because we get a collection of councillors asking questions which they're quite capable of asking in other places. And I think that that's the way I would see it, and the councillors would speak at the end of that meeting. It's about the public, not us, and we can make our representations through the town clerk and yourself, Madam Mayor, about our concerns. It's really about giving the public a chance to. Also, there was a consultation in 2019 about it was about bringing services to Buckingham. Everywhere else had their consultation finished. We never had ours finished in Buckingham. We had a public meeting in there, and the outcomes of that public meeting, we've never had a response back. Many previous councillors and present councillors sat in that meeting. So it's a bigger subject. So I think we still need to go ahead. Nothing's going to be more important to town than the health. And if that in itself creates a situation that supports the SWAN practice in their bid to improve services in Buckingham, that's got to be a good thing.
Thank you. Did anybody else want to speak on this? Councillor Try.
Time's moved on greatly since we first proposed this. I think if there is a meeting entitled Medical Services within Buckingham, I'm in favour of that, which is not exactly how it was originally worded, because it was worded about Buckingham Hospital and SWAN, but well, the medical centre at Lacehill, not SWAN practice. And I don't think we ought to have a meeting for those two particular areas in particular. We've got a good way forward in Buckingham Hospital. You know, they're doing what they're doing, and they've got a way forward. And at the moment, we're in disarray with the health centre, as we just heard. So if it's to bring questions from the public for those two areas, then I don't think that would be worthy of how this council should operate at this moment in time. But if it is about medical services and how they will be delivered through whatever mechanism there is, and whether we ought to have something more up here, considering hospitals and you get sent down High Wycombe, etc., all that kind of gizmo going on, then I think that would be a worthy meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else, any views on this one? Councillor Davies.
I understand entirely what the councillor is saying there, but unfortunately, I don't think that we hold any sway on the way that medical services are within hospitals, etc. And so I think it would be on hiding to nothing, and we'd possibly be giving members of the public the impression that they could actually do something about it when there's nothing to be done. They're not Bucks Health aren't going to start putting more services into Buckingham at this present time. You're not going to get a cardiac unit opened at Buckingham Hospital or anything like that. I always say, I think from that point of view, I'm not sure that we could achieve anything really by holding a public health meeting at the moment, because on the other side of the coin, everything would be about the swan practice, and
they've said they won't come as well. I think
that's what people would want to talk about. That would be the questions that would be being asked, I think.
Councillor Marvey, then Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. I've always been against public meeting, and the members know about this. Ever since the last one, when there was like a bun fight, a total attack on swan practice, and that was all it was, and it resulted in, unfortunately, some very good doctors leaving because they're so disgusted about the meeting. And I agree with Councillor Davis. It's going to end up in that kind of a meeting again. And till we have something concrete happening about in Lacehill, I'm totally against the public.
Thank you. Councillor Stuchbury.
We've done it again, haven't we? And I was trying to say that it isn't about Lacehill. But we come back to Lacehill. What you have to recognise is that all services are changing, but they're all changing their names. There's going to be Bob, there's going to be that. At some point, whether you like it or not, we've missed out on a consultation that everybody else had in Buckinghamshire. We didn't get told what our service position was going to be for community health stroke. Whatever. We can carry on not facilitating a public meeting. I think, I listen to what people are saying, I think that at the moment with the swan practice going on, there is danger that any public meeting we have at the moment would just be discussing the swan practice. And I do recognise that pain here, that we share it, don't we? But I do think we should not say we won't have a public meeting. I think what we do is because you're fortunate, you've got two members sitting on your committee who sit on the health and scrutiny. We're not going to be able to represent all your views because we've got our own views. But what I'm saying is that there is going to need to be a public meeting about how services are delivered in Buckinghamshire per se going forward. But they're going to change. They're going to change either correctly or badly. Look at the points made earlier by both Councillor Davey and Councillor Morgan about Aylesbury had a health centre, Brackley had a health centre, Buckingham didn't. That's because we have to speak for Buckingham. We have to be a voice for Buckingham. So I would say that we do not agree to have a date for the public meeting at this point. We give information which will extend this meeting greatly if we do it now to the town clerk about how that public meeting could be taking place. And let's get the consultation of the health centre finished in November, because having a public meeting during their consultation isn't appropriate. Because that would mean it would be about the consultation, that isn't right. So I'm considering that the original proposal needs 6 people to sign something to come back to council, the original motion out. Although it was 2018, I think we still need a public meeting. I think we need to define what that is about, and I don't think we are there, and I think we don't want to bully the swan practice with a public meeting today.
We definitely don't, because I concur with Councillor Mahi that having been public meeting at Lacehill, we drove those 2 GPs out, and that's the last thing we want to be doing. Did you had your hand up again, Councillor Mahi?
If you're going to have a public meeting, you need the stakeholders to attend. And the stakeholders in this case are the CCGs and the NHSs. And if they don't turn up, it's a pointless exercise. We can talk all amongst ourselves what we want and what we want to do. But if the stakeholders who are making the decision making, this is NHS and the CCGs, if they're not going to be there, it's a total pointless exercise.
You don't know they won't be there, we haven't asked them.
I think we can I just try and sum up and then see where we're going. Clearly healthcare, because COVID, has become a really hot issue and it's something everybody's concerned about. The question here is whether having a public meeting at this stage would be helpful or not. And I think the mood of the meeting is it probably wouldn't be very helpful to try to hold such a meeting at this time. It's a question then of whether we say we conclude this particular action that's been on our action list for so long and say let's draw a line under it and then revisit it at a time more appropriate when perhaps we're through the pandemic and things start to settle down again, because healthcare is in such a state of flux. The last thing we want to do is give further problems locally. Councillor Stuchbury.
I just advise you against doing that, because at the moment we've got a perfect situation where we have an action that we will have a public meeting. We will have to go through the whole rigmarole again with a member of the council putting a motion to council to have a public meeting, and that will be verbal, quite in depth and quite difficult. So I would suggest slight change to that we conclude that today is not the point to hold a public meeting because of the obvious. And we leave the action there and we conclude this conversation as we know more about what's happening with the pandemic, because no one's going to want to come to the public meeting, really, it being a crowded room, and we would be irresponsible having it. And we let the swan practice matter conclude to a degree, and then in reflection of that, then we will be having a public meeting about service provision in the town, which could be a more positive meeting than setting up people for a fall. I'm reluctant to your move taking it off, because I should put another motion on another council to put it back on. And you'll have to argue why you won't want a public meeting, and then you'll be having that argument in public. So I suggest slight change it, we just keep it there for a moment and carry on the discussion amongst ourselves, and then bring it back sometime after the planning may have concluded for the swan practice and the consultation has been completed. That would be a sensible thing, because there's lots of other changes that are on the way that we need to see that Buckingham sorted about.
Councillor Mordaunt.
I think it'd be more useful to have a meeting next year.
Yeah.
Because the CCGs are being wound up.
Correct.
And you've got the boss which will be taking over. And it's how that affects services in Buckingham. It'd be far more use to wait until then. And also we invite the Bucks Health Trust into about the hospital. I don't think everyone understands how actual health services are provided. You just want the service to be there when you want to go. You don't understand how the funding, in what I do, that's it.
So if we do as Councillor Mordew suggests and postpone till next year, Do we just leave this
Yeah.
on the action list? And
Exactly.
then at an appropriate time, we bring it back up again?
Leave it on the action
We've
list.
taken no decision.
Okay,
We've taken a good decision, which is to do nothing at this point.
are we all comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yep,
Yeah.
okay, thank you. Item 18, Child Poverty Day of Reflection and Action, and there's a written report from the town clerk. Councillor Stuchbury.
100% supportive of this report, and I think it should be I'd like to suggest that we have a group meeting of the council to discuss how we progress this, because we know we could bring all the different organisations of the town which are already doing things and find out what our part could be in that as a town council, with the advice of the officers on where we are, because our legal position isn't the same as another authority, and what we need to be is supporting all other actions. So I'm happy to do it, but I think we need to define what we're going to do. Because we're doing, just saying we support something is weak. We need to define what we're going to do to make it better.
Thank you. Councillor Willett.
I understand from the recommendations that it's to form a working group to formulate a plan for this debt collection. Now, this is kind of a personal, you shouldn't ever bring personal things into politics, but for this I am, as a person that works with young people that have been deeply affected by poverty, in my case, homelessness, as well as around the campaign trail when I stood for the town council. There were a couple of people that came to me and said that they were very destitute in Buckingham Town alone. I'd definitely like to put myself forward for this working group.
Thank you, that's really helpful. Is there anybody else who's, because this is the recommendation from the town clerk that we form a working group. I believe this original idea, correct me if I'm wrong, came from Councillor Harvey. Is that right? Councillor Davies.
I'd be very interested to work that as in my job role, working in school kitchens, although I don't encounter such things now working in the private sector at the moment. Yeah, the whole issue of food poverty is something that has hit me. I'm working on booking free meals as well.
Right. Yeah, thank you. Councillor Stuchbury.
Yeah, I too want to be part of it, mainly because it's the right thing to do, and also if there's any actions from it, it's about actions which can be taken elsewhere and things we do, and I'd be happy to support that.
So we've got three people willing, Councillor Willett, Councillor Davies and Councillor Stuchbury. And I know he's not here, but if Councillor Harvey, who I think it came from, wanted to be part of that group, then then he should be given that opportunity. So are councillors happy that we move forward and that group is convened?
Agreed.
And again, a doodle poll probably. And would you or who should contact Councillor Harvey?
That's the town clerk's job, isn't it?
Just a point to make, Madam Chair. I know it says child poverty. Could we include, if possible, students at the university who also struggle to feed themselves after the parents have paid for all the high fees and things? They do not have enough finances to be able to feed themselves, and they do use food banks. So maybe we could just include them, if it's okay with the. Yes.
I think that child poverty is a different matter to student poverty. Really, child poverty is a recognised.
I totally agree. I don't want to move away from that. I just thought
and I think as Councillor Mordew pointed out earlier, the Friends of Buckingham University do work with the students along those lines already, Yes, obviously there will be crossovers, etc. But I think that this particular working group needs to focus on the child element.
Thank you. I think that's helpful. So we're comfortable that we'll move forward in that way.
Yeah,
Agreed.
Thank you. Reports from representative of outside bodies. Has any...
Chair, could I just, at this point, normally on the agenda, we have an item for reports from Buckinghamshire Councillors. That seems to have slipped off this agenda, but it would be appropriate for Buckinghamshire Councillors to report back under this item as Buckinghamshire Councillors an outside body.
Thank you. Councillor Morton?
I thought I got off lightly. There isn't a lot to report that comes to mind. We all know that the Vale of Aylesbury Plan has gone through. I've been at HAZAC meetings, I've been at got a stands meeting tomorrow. There's a planning meeting last week, which Councillor Stuchbury was. I proposed that a new technology centre be built at Stowe, which created a lot of debate. We had the morning viewing up there in the afternoon debate, which went on for 3-4 hours, but it was good. And we had also a full council meeting, which fortunately I had to leave early to go to a parish meeting. I think you stayed to the end, Robin, didn't you?
I always stay to the end.
Yeah, well, brave guy. I tend to react to questions that are asked rather than give a report, because otherwise all it is just saying what I've done, and I'm not very good at saying what I do. I just do. Come on, Robin, over to you. You probably have far more to say than me.
Usually have. Yeah, council been ties to cabinet since we last met. Once was to do with the concerns that we all share over the archaeology. Second one was to verify elements around the Vale planning, to get it in writing, which both elements I've handed to the chair of planning to look at from a town council point of view. I've been to numerous meetings to do with lots of different subject matters, which we won't go into their very granular detail. Attended health and scrutiny this previous week, which was a very different meeting in the sense that questions we were asked intense, wasn't it? Very tense meeting. I probably made it very tense with my questioning, but that was productive in the way that we are jointly trying to get to the bottom of ensuring that your services you get are what you want, and the people who deliver those services actually deliver what they say they're going to do, and ask them questions around your well-being. I've also been to council with a motion to council which was to do with social and adult care. I agreed to amend that motion, agreed the amendment to that motion, because there have been decisions taken in the 48 hours which needed amended to make it legally correct. So we agreed the amendment, and that went through, which basically means that the whole council is going to be expressing its view through all the political parties jointly on their concern about the proper funding of adult and social care. Because you may not be aware that one of the big things with adult and social care is the social care precept, which at the present, if you live in our band D, you're paying £154, which is 10% of your council tax now, is actually funding social and adult care. It's £34 million of the total take in a year, and it's £120 million since it's been connected. That was done, and that went through. There was a motion which was deferred to the on the climate, which was deferred and voted on, and recorded vote on the principles around auditing the climate change, which was voted to, a procedural motion was called, and it was voted to go back to the audit committee to discuss whether the motion should have come in the first place, which Democratic Services had agreed was legal. So that was an end of the evening, which was a bit grim, to say the least. I will be going, like Howard, to the community board on the 13th, which is a meeting, I think it's on the 13th, where they're going to be looking at elements which to do this council and things that we've put in for in other parishes. I think the grants are going to that meeting, and whether they'll get agreed, only time will tell. That will be the things around the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit from the town council, which is our aspiration for a feasibility study around it. It'll be interesting to see whether the members support that, because it'll be a members vote. So if you have anything, you do that. I've also got another meeting on the 12th, which slips me my mind what it is, but it's in my diary. What's that?
Proposed cycle path between Buckingham and Silverstone.
That was it. We've done that. Yeah, that's it, Howard. Yeah, we've had a meeting on a proposed cycle path between Buckingham and Silverstone, which we both attended, and they're looking at. Do you want to do it?
No, it's in the early stages yet.
Yeah.
But just say there is proposals for having a cycle path from Buckingham to Silverstone, and it's all part of a national cycle path network. So it's not just Buckingham to Silverstone, and you fall off the edge of the world. It will carry on the other way as well. It's just sorting out the route.
Where is that proposed to go?
Sorry,
Where is that proposed to go?
no, it wasn't proposed today, it's just in the planning stage.
Yeah.
It'll go on for about a year or so.
Yeah, but what route is it proposed to go on?
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Through Stowe.
Up Stowe Avenue,
Yeah,
round through the National Trust,
okay.
and then the bit further on from the National Trust land up to Silverstone has still got to be agreed with the
So
landowner.
village and then up the, or across country.
It's across country, yeah, away from the road. Well, say across country. You can do a little bit of grading up there. It'll be fenced, it'll be tarmac to be maintained by the Buckinghamshire Council. And, I thought, I'll be honest, the cycleway between Buckingham and Winslow was a bit of a red herring, but a lot of people do use it, whether they're joggers, walkers or cyclists. I think we've got to think ahead rather than what people want
There's
today.
a lot of cyclists that don't use it. They
Yeah,
use the
they still use the road.
because of the amount of green glass.
We're drifting off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we are. There's two more
Sorry.
elements that I was going to say. I wasn't going to talk about that because it's at the early stages, but it's done that. Some of the things that I have done, I've had meetings which I copied the correspondence of town clerk with the developers on Lacehill. I've also had a meeting the other week, which I'm waiting for the outcome of it, with all the strategic players in the council over, not Lacehill, Tintlet Road, I mean, all the strategic players over how the section 106 played out. I've been involved in it since the onset of that development, and I wanted to resonate the things which were outstanding and the things that needed to be put through. I will bring once I've got the detail at response, I will bring that to Mark and in the planning committee, because I don't want to go into the granular detail of that, because I think that information will go to planning. But I am working hard to make sure that the voice of this authority, the questions which you would want asked are being asked, and we proceed on. I think that's probably enough because we've had a reasonably long evening.
Yeah, thank you. Are there any other reports from outside bodies? No.
About the Germans twinning.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
So,
Yes, the Twinning Association. I've had a meeting this afternoon to try and fix some detail. Members should probably already be aware that a small delegation is coming from Lathal and Flume on the weekend, the second weekend of fairs here. I'll just check the dates. The 22nd to the 24th of October, and the twinning agreement will be signed here. That was first signed by Councillor Cole when he was mayor and went to Lathal and Flume. We're trying to track down where those documents are so they can be replicated. Perhaps town clerk, I don't know, Councillor Cole apparently brought them back with him from Germany and presumably handed them to the town clerk or a member of the council team. So we need to be getting further copies so they can be signed in here on the afternoon of Saturday, the 23rd of October. So that I think that's a really positive development, because that should have happened last December, but had to be postponed because of the dreaded COVID. And we're planning a bigger event in March 22 when people will come from Lathal as well as from Lakeheath and we'll have a bigger event where all councillors can come and meet our partners.
For you, Madam Mayor, that'll be a council event.
Yes.
Not a twinning event. It's the council which will be funding it. So it'll be facilitated through our officers with conjunction of those on the twinning committee, but with all the knowledge we've learned from doing these things before, which is a lot actually.
Yeah.
We must go into that.
So that's something I'm really looking forward to, that when they come, but details are still being worked on, even though it's only a fortnight away. So thank you for the reminder about that. If we move on then, mayoral engagements, can we receive and note those? And from the deputy mayor.
Well done.
I haven't. It feels like I've been going to a lot of things.
I would like to say, Madam Mayor, it's an absolute pleasure to see you out and about doing things, and I think you do represent us very well, and I think the Civic Day was an occasion which I think we can all proudly say that you did as well, and it was nice to see our friends being rewarded for their service, and it was a nice day.
Thank you very
And I
much.
enjoyed seeing you around the town.
Thank you. I don't think I've got any other announcements, other than to thank everybody for making that.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, under your announcements, I was expecting Remembrance Sunday arrangements, because that's only a month away now.
It is.
Meeting didn't go ahead because somebody was ill.
Yes, we haven't had, I don't think, because this is a British Legion event and we follow their lead, and I don't think we've been sent anything yet.
Thank you. Comes under events, we had a meeting and we discussed it, and the meeting was called for a day that I was actually in another meeting, and the council Margaret was going to represent, so we are going to arrange another meeting. We have got time to do it. It's really about the element. I don't want to discuss that event, that's what the events committee did, but I can assure you that we have discussed it widely and took on board all the situations, and it was raised from the 2019, which and please can you, I know what, rather than put it in the public, please put that to us, because I know that you had some experiences which we need to take into account for Margaret, and I want those to go into the office so that they are considered. I don't think we need to say them now.
No, I think we're under chair's comments and we're drifting off again, but yes, thank you for the reminder that Remembrance celebration or commemorations are coming up, and I hope that as many councillors as possible will attend the parade, because it's tradition for the councillors to parade, but we also need councillors to staff road closure barriers.
Yes.
So it's a matter, so hopefully most people will be there in one capacity or the other.
Thank you.
I would encourage that.
And on a positive note, Councillor Bloomfield, retired Councillor Bloomfield, for the first time is going to be able to actually see you, because lots of these things, because he's always doing other road closures, so it's nice to know that he's going to be out there actually seeing some of these events.
So the date of the next meetings, Interim Council, the 1st of November, full Council, the 22nd of November. We now need to move into confidential sessions, so we need to stop recording.